Okay, I guess we can start now. So members will be joining in. So I guess they might miss out on a bit of the start, but that's okay. Let them join in. So hello everyone. I'm Siddesh Kataria, the General Secretary of MEGACM Student Chapter. In the past few weeks, I've seen a lot of chapter members coming up to us, showing their interest in the startup world. We organize lots of hackathons, which gives all of you an opportunity to work on your prototypes and to some extent test its viability. There are a couple of working team members too who have their own startups. So especially in MUJ, I'm pretty sure there are people who have set out to change their world with their $1 million idea. But to successfully execute a $1 million idea and bring it to the production phase, there are multiple checkpoints to cover before your dream is a reality. So I'd like to welcome you to the CoinDCX Presents ACM General Championship, organized by MEG ACM Student Chapter and co-powered by Eatshaw, where you can get started in your journey to implementing your world-changing ideas. So a grand event necessitates a grand opening. And so introducing to you our very first event, ACM Startup Table. Without any further ado, we welcome a distinguished panelist for today, starting off with Mr. Mikhail Inani, co-founder of FarmEasy and current CEO of Apollo Finvest. Up next is Mr. Ajay Ramasubramanian, the CEO of Startup Rezo. The third panelist for today is CA Anil Goyal, the founder and MD of CapSavvy. Last but not least, we have Mr. Aman Dhal, an extremely experienced host and the current CEO of Comscredible. Over to you, Aman. The floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, Siddesh. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, you and Ayush. I've got a little backstory with Manipal University. A couple of years back, when I was trying to be the best in my profession, I came to your campus, and I was accorded with a prestigious award there. So really, when Ayush approached me, I didn't wait a second to say yes to you people. So I think great. I think thank you so very much for having me here. I've got a very distinguished panel today, and I like the topic that you people have prepared for today, which is focusing on bootstrapping, investment, and fundraising. So I think without wasting much time, I think I'm going to start. What I'm going to do also is I'm going to ask you people who are there, students, everyone who have questions, keep typing your questions in the chat box. I'm going to pick them up as we actually go discussing a lot of things which might make value for you people. We'll try to ensure that we're giving you real understanding in terms of how the ecosystem looks like. So without wasting much time, I'm going to start this panel. I think first question I'm going to ask to Ajay, especially because he's coming from the accelerator side, from the he's working very closely with the VC side. So my first question is, is there a secret sauce to fundraising effectively? Please share your thoughts, and then I'm going to ask same questions to maybe Anil, and then I'm going to go to Nikhil. Ask him, because he was there with FarmEasy, right? What did he do different to fundraise? So over to you, Ajay. First, I'm going to hear from you. Yeah.
So thank you so much for having me on this panel. And I think maybe it's a two-letter word which goes by hard work. I think there's nothing more which is important when you're building a venture. And I think more important while you're even contemplating venturing down the path of building a startup or building a company, I think staying relevant is very important. I think there are lots gets spoken about investments, venture capital, and whatnot. I think the most important piece in the startup world is you're trying to build something which is relevant for an audience. That is, I think, the first bit. The second bit is trying to build something which will help you in building a business in itself, generating revenues. I think there's nothing sweeter than revenue as a mode of investing and bootstrapping your way and scaling. Uh, fundraising, I wouldn't say that fundraising and capital is not required. Yes, when you're looking at building it big and taking it to next level, you do require external capital. But there are a lot of companies which we see around us, whether in India, in global markets, which have probably never gone out to raise venture money, because I guess in the very early stage building a venture, just as much amount of time goes into building a product and building a business around it, takes almost the similar amount of time to go out and raise money. So in many cases it even acts as a distraction for lack of words. So for any young person out there who is building a venture, first and foremost is trying to identify a problem which is worth solving, building the first version, getting your hands dirty, and getting a validation that does anyone even require what you're building. And once you have done that, put in all means possible, look around, friends, family, whatever, I mean, to pull together some resources to build something which is a kind of a prototype or an MVP. Try and get into an incubator, accelerator, so that the early pain points of building a company, the early expenses that you might actually end up incurring, it kind of scales down drastically. And your first goal should be to get out rather than thinking of अगर कोई पैसा लगाएगा तो मैं कंपनी बनाऊंगा. That is absolute, I mean, wrong way of building a company. And there are a lot of people who do that mistake. Ideas everyone gets, but I guess raising money on an idea or building a company on someone else's money is not the best way of doing it. And there are a lot of yes, there might be pros that come with it, but there are also cons that accompany it if you try to raise money too early as well. So focus on building something which is valuable, rather than a lot of noise that we hear around valuation. So delivering value to someone is more important, and for that, building something which is meaningful is the point number. So I'll just limit it at that.
Great. I think Ajay, you picked up you emphasize on a one great point. Obviously, staying relevant is important. Validation is important. Revenue making. A lot of ventures, obviously we've gone through a stage where we've looked at a lot of these companies, burning a lot of money to get consumers onto their side, acquiring customers. Do you think, we are now entering a phase where even the VCs value companies which are showing more revenue sensibility in the beginning, then actually building communities. And obviously, because things are changing so dynamically, when we're talking about even building communities, every 3 to 5 years there is disruption happening, right? So many startups are entering the scene. The thought process with which you start, right, might not be the thought process with which you think you might be able to make revenues in 3 to 5 years or 7 years. Might be changing, by the time you enter your fifth or seventh year. So I think I'm going to ask this question and then actually go over to Anil. Are VCs becoming more revenue sensitive? Are they looking for companies who are from day zero, have a very clear path even in terms of the initial year revenues? Is that philosophy changing?
No, I think investors, I mean, let alone VCs, even if you look at angel investors who are probably professionals or probably even people who have made their money in other businesses and are probably kind of investing in companies of the future. I think uh, always looking at some kind of clarity in terms of year one, year two, year three, where and how are you going to start generating revenues. I'm sure that investors were always taking a look at that. Just that we have been through cycles of ups and downs, and lots more gets spoken about today. Probably it's a perception wala thing that today more than ever investors are probably revenue savvy. I don't think that is true. Also, the kind of companies that you spoke about, where revenues probably start showing up year two, year three, and much later. If you look at the kind of entrepreneurs who have got funded, these are entrepreneurs who have been at it for several years. They built successful companies in the past. They have exited in different ways, either through acquisitions and buyouts and whatnot. So I don't think that anyone who is starting up for the first time should get too caught up by all these things. Like I said earlier, I guess the most important thing one needs to focus on is, if you are building something, how is that bringing value to someone, and how are you going to kind of take it to market. I think that's the most important thing, rather than thinking किसी और के साथ क्या हुआ, how did someone else raise money, how did someone else scale their venture. I think that you shouldn't even get into that, probably for the audience which is in the room, which are essentially students who are most likely building their first ventures while on campus. I think you should try and build something which is probably generating revenue from day one, if not day zero.
Great. What's your view, Anil, on this? Tell me what's your view. I think very interesting what he has said. Focus on revenue from day one. I think focus on the value that you are bringing. Tell us.
So
What do you think about it? Yeah.
I'll tell you my take, because I belong to a community where I belong to Rajasthan, where most of the people are the business owners and they focus mainly on the business. So since our childhood, we have been taught, if there is no unit mechanics, or if you are not making profit out of your business, there is no sense in getting into the business. So I fully agree with the point raised by Ajay, that the main focus is on the investors, is always you should be have a revenue generating, or the sources should be clearly visible. I have seen many people, many founders who have come to me for funding. They say, this is my idea, the revenue side they have not yet thought of, and they say, we will build first something, we will offer all the discounts, and when there is a traction, that time we will think of revenue. But that actually model doesn't work. You have to show that some sample data is available, where takers are there at a price point, that okay, if I am offering this kind of value, there are people who are going to buy my product or the services. Then only people are ready to invest, even though it is seed capital or the main P funding, any kind of funding, but there should be some revenue sources visible.
Great. Point well taken. I'm going to move to Nikhil. I think he might have a very interesting view on this. He has been through the process of raising funds when he was at Farm Easy, and now he is, operating as a CEO for Apollo Finvest. Nikhil, what's your take on this?
Yeah, fundamentally, to be very honest, I feel like, there are two big aspects of this, right? Number one aspect is, I think, the only focus for an entrepreneur literally should be their customers. Everything else is noise, right? If you have happy customers, basically, I think everything else is a consequence of that. Nothing happens without that, right? So as an example, if you start focusing on, PR or marketing or raising funds or anything like that, you are basically fooling only yourself, right? Because the reality is, it's the investors' jobs to invest. Your job as an entrepreneur is to make sure you have paying customers, you have happy customers, and you're actually making sure that they continue using your services. So it's actually pretty simple. You keep that focus. Number two thing to always remember when you're fundraising is, equity is another form of debt. So, thanks to all the PR and, marketing, again, it's celebrated every single time. But I think, if you start looking at it in a very different light, right? Every time anybody kind of raises funds, you should know that suppose you raise 1 million, the investors actually expecting $10 million back, right? That's the reality of it. If you deliver less value, it's actually a big failure. So, it's again, it's a very, very expensive form of debt, right? Equity is much more expensive than debt. So this is another very important fact to remember. So at least in my experience, the way, I always recommend people is, don't take equity unless you really, really need it, right? And when you need it, make sure you take the least amount of it, because actually from an entrepreneur's perspective, the only way you're ever going to get rich is when your equity is really, really valuable. And when is equity really, really valuable? When it's actually, when somebody's really going to buy it at that valuation, right? Because otherwise it's all monopoly money, right? Which you're, the more and more you raise valuation, the more and more you're basically putting up, you're putting more people in front of you in the line to get paid. Essentially, that's what's happening, right? That's how all investors basically put their money. No investors are stupid. There's a reason why billions of dollars are going into startups today, because fundamentally they're all betting that these are all smart individuals. And ultimately, what's going to happen is that if all of these smart individuals on an average basically will give good returns, the returns will first come to the investors and then follow to these entrepreneurs, right? So it's very, very important to understand economics, right? I think as a startup founder, I think you should just focus on two things, right? First is actually the customer. Second is, before you do fundraising, understand economics, and then you will understand, where everybody's incentives kind of lie before you take anybody else's, a single penny.
Great. I think, Nikhil, what I see a common thread from you, Ajay, and also Anil is, I think somewhere it's more tilted in the favor of bootstrapping to a longer time, creating value, and then actually fundraise. Uh, let me bring, this brings me to my next question actually, which is also linked in the way. Uh, till how long one should bootstrap? Ajay, you want to go first on this?
Sure. I don't think there is any right answer or wrong answer to this. Whether so someone might believe in bootstrapping for a decade. Someone might bootstrap till the time their product is out there, it's validated, there are customers, there is revenue coming in, there is unit economics involved, and then realize that okay, now I'm confident to go and take someone else's money. So I don't think there is a one size fits all or a playbook kind of an approach as to when to go out and raise money. So it can differ from business to business. It can differ from an individual to individual. So it's a very personal thing to an entrepreneur as to till when they want to bootstrap. Also, I mean, to the point that Nikhil made, right? I guess it's, I mean, the kind of resources each individual might have could be very different. The kind of companies they are building could be very different. So, I mean, a lot of factors that kind of come in. So there is no one answer as to till when one should bootstrap.
But any kind of say, especially for the students who are trying to who are starting their own ventures right now,
Yeah.
there's a lot of interest. Any kind of indicative milestones where they should think, okay, I'm now ready to fundraise. Obviously, I don't want to say it in as many words.
No,
I know
again,
that, yeah, I know somewhere that my question
yeah,
is
that is
not,
where
yeah.
I guess that is the point that Nikhil was making, right? If you look at equity, if you look at debt, they're all different forms of going out and raising money. I mean, uh, businesses which early on raise equity at a later date might go and kind of, so especially consumer internet ventures, B2C ventures, they raise debt capital as well at some point in time. And there are, I mean, just like there is innovation happening within the startup world, innovation happening in the corporate world, there is innovation happening within forms of capital available as well. Right now, there is revenue-based financing. There are so many other newer ways of funding business available. When it comes to student entrepreneurs, and so so what I will also include in bootstrapping, I mean, beyond your own money, either resources pulled together from by friends, from family, whatever. I think student entrepreneurs should also keep their eyes open on different kind of other opportunities available for grants and other forms of non-dilutive funding. Also, if you look at the incubator ecosystem in the country, and particularly incubators which are funded by different agencies under Government of India, whether it is Niti Aayog, whether it is Department of Science and Technology, there are different grants available even from Government of India for prototyping, for building a first iteration. So those are also avenues that keep their eyes and ears open as to what are the different forms of capital available for me, which will allow me to bootstrap for the long term, right? So there is no straightforward answer, but yeah, once you're in it, you need to find out where. So for example, if you're spending money on, say, so if you go to tier 2 and tier 3 cities, sitting in a Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, one might still be aware of the different credits available from different technology players, the Microsofts and the Amazons of the world, and everyone. But if you go to tier 3 cities, and I've had this personal experience going to incubators or co-working spaces where you meet startups and they are still kind of जो उनके developers हैं, if they're outsourcing the entire technology component, there is someone else who is billing them for their cloud server, someone else building them for hosting the website, tons of other expenses which in effect are nullified today. The cost of doing a mobile internet startup today is significantly low or is almost non-existent if you went back 10 years or 15 years. There are no cost of cloud servers and other infrastructure which would come in. But if startups in tier 2, tier 3 cities, and particularly ones which are just working by themselves, are not aware of how can I minimize the cost, I think, I mean, you're on one hand not earning money, but at the same time you're spending on what you don't need to spend, which is an additional expense as well. So you need to find different ways of operating at as thin a cost as possible, and that will allow you to probably bootstrap for the longest.
Great. I think Ajay, you mentioned a very good point. Non-diluting funds. There are many of these available in the market. Keep an eye open on them. Uh, at the same time, obviously, for any person, when you start looking at the ecosystem, it's very difficult to shut yourself from the noise. It's very easy to say that, right? For all of us, that, okay, focus on building value. I think that brings me to my next question, Anil. Uh, Anil, how do you think a student can actually shut down himself or herself from all the noise that's in the market, so that that person can actually focus on creating value? How does this person also get a lot of people together with them who believe in this dream of whatever this person is trying to build? Plus, if you think there are any kind of things you would like to highlight in terms of, okay, uh, till this time period you should bootstrap, and you should looking at, if your business has started showing up on certain parameter, you can look towards raising funds. So Anil, over to you.
Yeah, so I fully agree that if you get capital, non-dilutive capital, definitely it can add value. And the most important part is, if you go for the next round of funding, the actual seed funding or the equity funding, that time it play a very important role. That, okay, someone has trusted on you, as someone has trusted on your idea, and that is how it is going to benefit. Coming to bootstrapping, it's a most effective way, which can give you positive cash flow right from the beginning, and it can reduce your cost of capital also, because you are not dependent on the high cost of borrowing or the equity. And so during initial period, till the time your idea, your product is accepted in the market, you need to remain within your cost effective measures, like into making your home into as office. There are people I have seen where they created their product within a office area of 10 by 10 feet, and they have given revenue of 3 crore 4 crore rupees just with the 10 by 10 office. So uh, remain cost competitive initial days, just to reduce your effective cost of the product or the services, and manage every penny of the budget that you have done for yourself, because it is your own money, or it is money earned through your own products. And so there is no firm rule as such that, okay, this is the time that you should be. It all depends on your business model also. So as a thumb rule, no one will give you money unless there is a value, or unless there is a paying customer available. And but it is never a matter of how long you can ramp up or take off. How quickly you can take off is the game of the is the game that you need to play. Fuel can come automatically. So if you can create the business in such a way that it is ready to take off, that time the money can come in. Till that time, you need to fund it is through yourself. When I say through yourself, you try your product with limited people, but the idea should be good enough that it can go to mass, because people who are coming to pay you the check as an investor, they are looking at 10x or 20x value. If you talk about so much of market available, and you are presenting to the investor will always think, what is the value for me? So they will always think, if I am investing a lakh rupee, whether I can get 10 lakhs rupees back maybe 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line. And sometimes when you start making unit mechanics, that time it is the right time that you can go and start your funding. So if you can prove that I'm making a product, and that product making and selling price, it's matching. So I'm making profit out of my each product I'm selling. That is the variable cost versus the revenue. That time it is the right time that you can go to the market and raise funding.
Great. Anil, thank you so very much for listing out some of those parameters. Plus, also, you spoke about the cost competitiveness. Nikhil, let me come to your journey at PharmEasy. When did you decide? Okay, now we should fundraise, or tell us a little bit about your journey. I think that would have a lot of cues for students.
No, definitely, right? So, I mean, honestly, I'll tell you, like, fundamentally, right? Like, there are two kinds of companies you can usually end up creating, right? One is a category creating kind of company, which is what PharmEasy, was, right? And one is basically, taking something which already exists and making it ultra efficient, right? So there are two kinds of companies I've created, right? Apollo Finvest is basically, taking what already exists in the market and making 100x more efficient using technology, right? So there, we're not creating a category, but PharmEasy was creating a category, right? So when you're creating a category, right, and a great example of this is Uber, Ola, Amazon, many of those companies, right, they were category creators because before them, something like this didn't exist, right? When Pharmacy was trying to sell medicines online, there was no concept like this, right? Fundamentally, even when we got started, even the founders used to fundamentally question this, that who's going to buy medicines online, right? Because when you're sick, there are chemists every 5 minutes of your house, you just go down and buy it. So realistically, if you have fever, you're not going to be waiting on an app and, it's not going to be delivered in 24 hours. You're not going to wait. So honestly, it was a big question mark for us, right? But the reason why we got interested in doing something like this, because we could actually deliver value to our customers by delivering them really, really affordable healthcare, right? And after we actually did this experiment for a period of 2 to 3 months, that's when we kind of realized that the kind of people who were ordering medicines from us were people who have high blood pressure, cancer, diabetes, people like that, right? People who basically needed the medicines, but their life was not dependent on it, right? They were people who were basically taking medicines, and they're going to be taking these medicines for life, right? Almost like chronic subscribers in many ways, right? So they weren't, as an example, it wasn't time sensitive, right? But they were definitely cost sensitive. So it took us 2 to 3 months to basically identify our target demographic, right? Once we identified a target demographic, one of the funniest things is actually our very first investor, came to us because they came to know about Pharmacy. They became a user of Pharmacy, by the way. They had their grandparents' medicines ordered through Pharmacy, saw the experience, loved the experience, identified with the problem statement, and that's when they actually approached us that, hey, we wanted to, fund you guys. In our case, we required funding because in order for us to deliver those 15-20%, much more cheaper medicines to the end customers, we knew we could do that at scale, right? There was a clear roadmap and a plan to basically make this sustainable, right? It wasn't just cash burn for the sake of cash burn, but in order for us to reach that scale, right, we definitely needed those funds, right? And what investors loved about us is, again, it wasn't an arbitrary 15-20% discount. There was a clear roadmap, as an example, which we had laid out, that if we scale this, we will be making X percentage margin. A subset of that X is 15-20%. And that's what we're offering today to the customers in order to basically, supercharge basically growth, right? But that is basically what led to the attraction of all investors basically coming in and buying the story. Because again, the discounts weren't a tactic. Affordable healthcare was basically the idea and was the main thing that we were actually focusing on, right? And that's how basically, obviously, we got great product market fit, and investors basically came naturally to us.
How much did you fundraise? Uh, and who was your first investor who got you other investors?
To be very, very honest, right? Like our very first investor, right, was actually our very close friend, right? So it was crazy, right? I mean, let me put it this way, right? We were on a phone call, I remember, right? Like, and we were all discussing that, now we need to do fundraising because, we've been doing this for 2 to 3 months and, we put a lot of resources behind this. And literally, by the way, my co-founders used to be the one who used to himself drive, right? Go to the chemist, pick up the medicines and deliver it to the, to the houses of these customers, right? Which was obviously unsustainable because we were getting 20 orders a day, right? And 20 orders a day at that point in time when you have one delivery boy, which is your co-founder, is a lot, right? Because this was coming all over from Bombay. So we're thinking, okay, we need to, hire interns, we need to do this, we need to do that. And that's when our, friend basically came to know that, listen, you guys are looking for funding. I think what you guys are doing is phenomenal. I think your team is A plus. He knew us forever and ever. And literally on a phone call, he committed like, $500,000 to us, right? This was like unbelievable. And there was no valuation, there was no terms, there was nothing, right? All he basically said is that I trust you guys. You guys are going to do something big. And on the basis of this, I'm going to be committing this capital to you. And whenever your next round happens, right? Whenever it is an institutional investor who comes in, that's when we'll figure out what is my valuation and how should I price it, etc. Because he wasn't a basically, practiced investor, right? This was his only, startup investment of all time, literally his first. And even till this date, by the way, that's the only startup investment he's made. And the funny story goes that, in his house, right? Like, and, we were all super young, right? We were like, what, 26, 27. He convinced everybody at home, obviously, to make this investment. And at his house, by the way, he was known as a person who, wasn't always basically super serious about, work and things like that. But now, what, it's been 6-7 years now, and the amount of, I mean, it's crazy, but the amount of money he basically made out of this investment was more than his, entire family business has made in the last 25 years, right? And now his parents basically, right, like they do not say anything to him and his ideas, right? It's just a crazy story, but internally it's a huge joke, right? Like, for something like this to happen is classic stuff which sometimes can happen, right? When you have great luck, right? But this isn't a advertisement of making angel investments. 99% of these things go absolutely brutally wrong, right? So he was incredibly lucky, and we were incredibly lucky, but that's a little bit on how we got our first check, basically.
Great. I think lovely story, and I think I'm really delighted I asked this question. I think there's a learning for all of you. Please take your friends and family seriously. They can be your angel investors. They can change your life. Don't take them for granted, like they are taking you for granted. Please don't take them for granted. I think lovely point made somewhere. I think there's a lesson here, especially for people who are trying to create categories. It's not easy to raise funds. At least what I know of the startup ecosystem, I've been part observing it as a journalist, and then later on, I was part of it with the Policy Bazaar story. Especially where there is a conversation about category building companies. The funding will usually come from someone who knows you. It won't come from that extended network unless that person knows you, trusts you. Could be anyone. So I think there's a great learning, and thank you so much, Nikhil, for sharing this story. I think I'll move on to this question that has come from Abhinav, one of our students here. Uh, Basically, there are various forms of grants and fellowships, but to get incubated, they do take equity between 6 to 10%. Should startups give up that much equity when they're just starting? I don't know, Abhinav, if it is true for all the incubators, but I think I'll pass on this question to Ajay.
Sure, I don't think that is true. Campus incubators taking equity just for the incubation, I don't know. I mean, there might be people to kind of have their own sustainability in place and hoping that some startups will give them kind of returns in the long run, might want to kind of just pick up stakes, but I'm really unsure of that, unless and until someone is putting the seed money. I don't think that campus incubators take equity, but you never know. I mean, there are people always out there who might at your expense want to make a quick buck or what it is, but you got to be kind of really careful. And unless and until, I mean, no two incubators, no two accelerators are the same. You need to kind of really be sure as to, if you're getting into an incubator, what are the reasons behind it. I mean, shared infrastructure cannot be the reason for it. It has to go beyond that. Either it is access to capital, access to networks, access to people who will help you build better ventures. So even the call that you as a young entrepreneur should take or must take with respect to getting into an incubator, you need to kind of weigh the pros that come with it. Just do not take an offer that any incubator kind of makes to you. And uh, so likewise, it works for mentors as well. There are a lot of people who say, "I'll mentor you and so and so. I can open up my network and blah blah blah." And all they want is to get a piece out of your company without kind of having any skin in the game whatsoever, whether it is money or whatever. So you need to kind of really be careful of people and institutions which probably want to take a piece of your company without actually putting money in your venture. So I would recommend that be very careful. And I don't think that all incubators take 6 to 10%. So definitely for sure.
Great. I think, Ajay, I'm going to ask another follow-up question. There are people who have turned investors. These are founders who have turned investors. Obviously, they have been through their own journey, right? And they're still founders at companies. Uh, do you think it's great to get them on board, fundraise from them, knowing very carefully that obviously they're running their own venture? They won't be able to give you time. Maybe they'll be able to give you little money. Is it wise to get them on board as investors?
It's not whether you want to get them on board as investors, right? Whether someone finds your venture attractive to put money into. There are a lot of active entrepreneurs who also do make angel investments, and these are entrepreneurs who probably are not very early on in their own journey, but maybe it's their second company, their third company, whatever it is, and in their personal capacity, they are writing these small checks.
Right.
Usually, they operate within a network or a circle of trust. They wouldn't kind of anything coming into their inbox, they're going to kind of take a look at it. That doesn't happen. I mean, most recent case and example would be Amrish Rao and Jitendra Gupta, who successfully exited out of Citrus Pay, which later on became PayU, and they were actively investing, and I mean the number of investments increased, something that they could keep account of or actively engage. They decided to set up a proper full-fledged venture fund. Likewise, there are so many other successful entrepreneurs who have already either made an exit or probably have scaled their companies significantly, who also do make investments, but they make it within their own little circle of trust. So you need to kind of really stand out and and something which kind of seems attractive to them. So it's not whether you want to have them on board as an investor, but whether your venture is attractive for someone to hop in and
But
write you a check.
let me ask this way, uh, your venture is attractive. They want to come on board. Now there are 10 of them.
Yeah.
Then what?
So just because someone is an entrepreneur and a successful one at that does not mean that he or she will be the best investor you can get. So you need to kind of weigh in your options as to what are the options that I have, and whether this person. So beyond capital, I would think that what an entrepreneur who has built, whether your venture is a B2C and you're going after a B2C entrepreneur, if you're a B2B going after B2B entrepreneur, I think the bigger aspect is what is it that they can bring to you beyond the money part of it. Because money, a lot of people can write you a check, whether it is domain expertise, whether it's a potential opportunity that they themselves go ahead and acquire your company, whether it is the doors they can open for you. So you need to look at it from different angles beyond just the check size. Because so for example, if you look at a lot of ventures that have Mr. Ratan Tata as their investor from his family office, the check sizes may not be as big as a VC, but the brand that Mr. Tata is, I think that is something which has prompted a lot of these people to raise money from him or have him on board, right? So likewise, it's very subjective, I would say, to the individual, and what is it that they want or expect by getting someone on board as an investor, and not just an entrepreneur, even a senior executive from the industry. If you're building a fintech, it's always advisable that you have someone who understands banking as an industry best. If you're building something in aerospace or space technology, you want someone who probably understands their domain. So more than the money, it's the understanding of the core domain, the networks that he or she brings, which is more valuable in that case.
Great. I think great point made. I'm going to go to Anil. There's a question from Ashutosh. Do investors really start in pre-revenue startup? And I'm going to follow up with another question. Now I'm going to first have you answer this question. Yeah.
Uh, so, giving straight answer to the question, yes, they do invest pre-revenue also. The only thing is you need to sell your story to the investor, right investor. Yes, there is a potential in your idea. Now, your idea has to be supported by some kind of market research, some kind of testing, some kind of inputs from the users that my idea is good enough that it is scalable and it is filling the vacuum which is available in the society or the mass. And second thing is investor who is investing, as just now I think Ajay said, that the trust will play a major role. So if you are getting to the investor and investor is already having a trust on you, then you can access that capital also pre-revenue stage. But in that case, you need to ensure that you sell your story enough that yes, my product is marketable enough and there are takers for my product or the services.
Great. There is another question. I don't know if you can take up or somebody else. Uh, cryptocurrency, I think somebody is asking a question, what's the future of cryptocurrency? Would anyone like to take that question up? Anil, would you be able to take that up? Or should I go to Nikhil?
I mean,
I can
okay.
just
Anil, you want to go for it? Go for it.
Yeah, Nikhil, you can add subsequent to that. But cryptocurrencies, I would say it's a risky share market business. And recently, and in the budget, there is a mention of cryptocurrency that Indian currency is also going to be created. Cryptocurrency is going to be created. So yes, there is an opportunity available for all of us to get into the cryptocurrency. And not only just the revenue side, but the technology side also, there is a lot of opportunity. So as a business model, yes, there is an opportunity available for all the young entrepreneurs to get into it. But if you are thinking about the investing into cryptocurrency, then there is a risk factor involved. So we should be careful about that. Nikhil, you can add your perspective.
Yeah, no, honestly, I feel like, cryptocurrency, I think, at least personally, I feel there's a huge future ahead of this because ultimately, I describe it in one simple line. So far, internet has basically come in and, digitized everything. So far, the only thing which hasn't been digitized is money itself, right? And that's going to be fundamental actually for money to be set free, right? Money has not been set free for many, 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 many decades now. Truly to decentralize money, to truly set it free, to truly allow it to, flow very, without any friction through the system, basically, that's what is truly basically required, right? Simple stuff like, when you're transferring money from one country to another, even though two, citizens can be doing a completely legal transaction, right now it is subjected to a lot of pain, right? Because we assume everybody's a terrorist, right? Essentially, right? So we always take the lowest common denominator and we apply it to these things. So a lot of those things I think are going to be under severe attack over the next 4 to 5 years. And I think cryptocurrency is exactly going to be something where it's going to take decades for something big to happen, but then overnight that thing will happen, right? So it's in weight of one killer use case, right? And then once that is found, essentially, right, it will basically begin to really really eat up into a lot of these imperfections which are present in fiat. So that's what I kind of expect. So yeah, if I was a student right now, I would really really closely keep an eye on things because it has humongous potential. And whenever you see the smartest people in the room start focusing on something with so much energy and power behind it, usually there is an outcome to this, right? And the outcome may not be what it is you expect it to be. It may be totally different, something totally different, but it will certainly be very powerful.
Great, great, interesting. I think, definitely, I think the way, obviously, the government has also taken cryptocurrency seriously now. It's a virtual digital asset. Obviously, it's a measure which is coming closer to recognizing that. How the journey will take place, only time will tell. But I think it is exciting international markets. I think I'll come to the next question, which is come from Dhruv. Uh, I think it would be relevant for Ajay to answer. Uh, do investors hesitate in investing in startups founded by college students?
Not really. At least in the last 3 or 4 years, I think there are quite a few funds that have been set up specifically to invest in undergrad, postgrad students. So it's while it wasn't very common probably 3 or 5 years back. I think in the last couple of years, a lot of things have changed. A lot of existing venture funds have created sidecar funds that would invest particularly in student ideas or student founded ventures. So yeah, again, it comes down to, I mean, what you're building. I mean, what you're building with, so not as a, I don't know how to put it. There aren't too many students, if I were to just put it out, there aren't too many students who are very focused or have a long term kind of vision. When I say long term, 3 to 5 years, बहुत बार ये होता है कि मतलब they pursue something in the second year, third year, and by the time fourth year comes, and if there are campus placements happening, it's a kind of something that they need to take a call on कि यार campus placement बैठना है कि इसको pursue करना है, and a lot of them they end up going the campus placement route. So that and that's where I guess if you're looking at engineering students, I think folks in the final year, and where if they're working on some kind of a dissertation and that is something that they want to pursue and they have full-fledged plan कि यार यही करना है, so then it makes sense to spend some more time once you're out of college and probably building it out and forming a company or whatever, and then probably going out. But just having an idea and while you're in your second year, third year, and not being really sure, I think that is something which probably might act as a showstopper when it comes to investors, where they're not really sure if this person will possibly continue with this venture when he or she finishes their course or program. So that's the
Also,
only factor. Yeah.
also, Ajay, do they trust students? So there is not only one student, there are always a couple of students who might be coming together. Do they really trust that friendship will, stay together once they start?
No, so I'll give you an example. So I don't know. While I haven't watched even one episode of Shark Tank. I don't know if anyone here has. There was this company, Tinkerbell Labs. They're building those devices for. They're basically braille-friendly devices, helping people learn and whatnot. So these guys were studying in BITS Goa, and I know them since 2014. So when they were in their second year undergrad, and at that time I used to run a fairly successful accelerator called Zone Startups, which was at the Bombay Stock Exchange, and we used to host something called Angel Hack. So Angel Hack happens globally. I'm sure many of you in the audience as well might have participated in the Angel Hack, some edition wherever. Now, these guys were building the same thing back in 2014. They were just playing around with Arduino kits and whatnot. 2014, they participated in Angel Hack with the same idea. 2015, they participated. 2016. Second year, third year, fourth year. Till today, it is the same team. 3 years, second year, third year, fourth year, they participated. 2016, when they graduated, the first round of funding they went out and raised was from Indian Angel Network, and Mr. Anand Mahindra was also one of the investors. And since then, they have only gone on to iterate the product. The basic idea remains the same, what they're building. They wanted to kind of ensure that education is same for everyone, doesn't matter how, where you come from, and including people who unfortunately cannot see for whatever reasons. And that remains the same, just that the way the product looks, the form factor, that kept kind of changing. But it's the same team which has stuck it out. And at that time, 2016, 2017, I don't think that the early stage venture ecosystem in India was, because see, when you talk of things like accessibility, it's a very tough subject. While you can talk of UN SDGs and whatnot today, going back 5 years, not too many investors were savvy about investing in accessibility, because as a country, we haven't invested that much in accessibility. Even if you look at physical infrastructure, whether you look at malls, railway stations, bus stop, airports, whatever, if you go outside of India, accessibility is taken up in a very different way. As a country, we're yet to catch up. So looking at that kind of a company, to expect that they would be able to find investors was not there. But still, they found someone. They used to win a lot of grants and grand challenges and whatnot. And probably someone took a bet and they were able to raise money. So it is not that college students cannot. And I have seen in the last 7 or 8 years, a lot of people who started out in their final year of engineering, they started out with something, they've stuck it out 5, 6, 7 years down, they're still building similar stuff, just that they've iterated upon it in a massive way, and it's a proper product which is solving a problem. It's not a project, it's a product out there. So I don't think that being a student stops you from being imaginative or building something which is solving a global or a big problem.
So I think you want to say that, stick together, keep at it, ensure you are, creating value, you know, I think funding is a subset of all these things somewhere,
Yeah,
ensure
funding. I mean, if you're building something of value, money will find its way. So
right.
don't just chase that as the winning moment for you.
So Kathan, you've got a question and I've somewhere, Ajay has also answered and I've somewhere summarized the same, but I'm going to still, take that up question and I'm going to ask that question to Anil. Kathan is a co-founder of a cybersecurity firm called Bugbase. His question is basically, are investors putting money in certain sectors more? And obviously, I think he wants to ask, whether he can, he has good chances to fundraise.
So sector play a very important role, definitely. Uh, Generally, the current sector is in demand is fintech, agri-tech, or food tech. So those kind of industries are getting more attention. But I would say the sector play a little role. But first thing is, how are we prepared, or how are we adding value? As I said earlier also. So if we can answer these 7 commandments, which I generally talk to all the founders who come for the investment. So first is, what is the reason of our existence? So if it means, are we able to answer clearly what the problem are we solving? So what is the value proposition that we are offering to the world, or to the end user, or the target customers? And accordingly, you judge yourself whether we are meeting that requirement. And second is imaging where could we. Generally, we don't see the total market size available 10 years down the line, 50 years down the line. So are we creating a good sizable market position ourselves with our product or services? And third question which we should be answering ourselves is, why do people want this product more than any other product available in the market? So our product should act as a painkiller, and which should be able to sell itself. It must fulfill the vacuum or the existing gap which the society needs, and it should provide a non-linear growth. So when we add capacity, it should go viral on its own. That means people are there on YouTube. They should be able to use your app and give video that this is how it functions. So automatically people are getting into your product on its own viral without you promoting it. And the next is, why is this is the right time to build startup? So that means you should be able to define in clear terms as to why this is the right time to build and expand. So you have done your product, now people are started using it. Now you want to scale up. So when you are scaling up, take a pause and see that whether it is the right time to build further, or is there any further updates required on our product or services. And the next is understand where we are right now. So means we should be established ourselves as to that there are no existing players, or our solution or the product is different than the existing players, or there is an entry barrier for others. And or market demand is huge enough that there is a scope for two or more than two players, like we have seen Amazon and Flipkart. And the next is, why is not everyone working on it? So if you have gone with the proof of concept with the clear idea, and you said that there is no one else working, then there is a question why people have not started working on it. That means you need to prove what is your strength in terms of education or the delivery or the sales channel, and the new way. Either your product is a new way that the or the service which currently people are enjoying, and your product will create a completely different experience for the people. Like pandemic situation, now before because of pandemic, a lot of people's perception have changed. So your product or the services should be able to define. So sector is not really play a very important role. The idea or the preparedness of yourself will play a major role in terms of getting into the funding.
Great. I think I've just realized we've hit a 1 hour mark. I'm just going to wrap this up. I think last question I'm going to ask. It's a fun question, so I'm going to start with Nikhil and then over to you. If you've given a choice, what's your dream approach to building a business, bootstrapping or fundraising? I'll start with Nikhil.
The answer is pretty clear. I mean, essentially for me, it's bootstrapping. That's what I'm doing in my current business as well. And the reality of it all in one simple line is because ultimately, again, I hold a very clear belief that only way to kind of make, real capital, real money in life is the equity. So if your venture basically allows you to do it, hold as much of it as possible. And the way to kind of do that is bootstrapping. So definitely, bootstrap. There's no more people ahead of you to kind of make money. You're the first in line to lose money, and you're the first in line to make money, right? Like that's how it kind of works when you're building any business, and that's how it should be.
Great. Ajay, what's your choice?
Choice over?
Over, bootstrapping or fundraising when you're building a business, especially the first 5
Bootstrapping
years?
all the way. Bootstrapping all the way. Only when you actually, so there is no point. So people want to raise money just for the heck of it. Many of them, right? I mean, people come with astronomical valuations and whatnot, and even before their product has hit the market, they want to raise 5 crores. Are you going to use 5 crores tomorrow? In all possibility, you're not, right? So raise only that much money that you require when you don't have it. So bootstrap till then.
Anil, last one.
Yeah, I would say it depends. Definitely, bootstrap is better, but there are reasons that why you should be going for bootstrap or investment is the right choice. So there are side effects also of the bootstrapping. Generally, I've seen people who have been, like Joho is the example, where they have been totally funding about within their own revenue or the self funding. They were still not gone for funding. So there are few negatives also of bootstrapping. Just wanted to highlight because we have been talking everything that you cannot get funding. Bootstrap is only the option. So for all the students, just to say my point that there are danger side of it. One is the slow progress. So it take a lot of time, and because you have invested a lot of amount of time, so you will be able to add maybe few amount of customers or few amount of revenue. Now that will act as a negative. That 2 years you have just added 500 customers or 1,000 customers, which is low in comparison to the mass people. The second is the mindset. That means if investor is investing in your company or your startup, and so far you have been managing entire thing through bootstrapping, then there will be a negative mindset that whether you will be able to shift gear when you get money. And the third most important is the assumption, which even though you said why you have chosen the route of bootstrapping, but the investor will have a different assumption in their mind that maybe your product is not good or people have not trusted you, and that is why you did not go for the right time investor. So there are few negative things also, but given a choice, bootstrap is always better, but to a certain amount of time only, and then you should go for the actual investment so that you can create better value for your business.
Let me summarize this for people. If you can cut the noise, create value, bootstrapping is the way to go. You are not answerable to anyone. A lot of times under peer pressure, we are chasing funds where we don't need to. We actually need to focus on building value. And I think that is something you will know as an individual, as an entrepreneur. How much you want to bootstrap your way up. There is no limit, right? Obviously, we have seen in the market where traditional businesses have felt slightly intimidated by the fact that some newer startups have come, grown in valuation, despite they being profitable, right? But I think it's a choice. It's a choice. Somebody wears a Prada and somebody wears a Bata. You know what I mean? So it's an individual choice. So it's up to you how much also pressure you can soak in. It's not that you will fundraise, that pressure won't come to you. You have to deliver value. You have to deliver 10x, 20x, and you have to get work done from the set of people you're going to hire. And it's not easy as it might seem. Talent is scarce. Also, the expectations, while you might be thinking on certain lines, how do you align people around you? So I would say uh, it's a it's a choice. It's a choice that you have. If you ask me as an individual, I'll go for bootstrapping till the time I feel there is someone who can really create value for me as an investor, who can really scale up my idea to that level where I dream of, without that person intimidating me into doing things. I think that is where I would look to have that investor on board who's also acting as a mentor. But again, I think as I mentioned, every individual is different. You might have a different story. You might be looking to raise funds quickly. So there is no one answer to this. I think I'll wrap up this session. I think some lovely thoughts from all of you people, Ajay, Nikhil, Anil. I think there are various ways today to fundraise. I think Ajay brought in a very good point about non-diluted funds. Look at them. Today you can also do crowdsourcing, crowdfunding. I mean, there are various ways. If you are smart enough, you will find your way. I think Anil also spoke some great things about grants and other stuff. And Nikhil, I think it was lovely to know your journey. Especially that part where you spoke about how did you raise funds, and I think that's a fundamental lesson for everyone here. There are orbits. First, impress your orbit. There is a lot of value in your orbit. You know, if you create that value in your orbit, you can always change your orbit. Okay, so I'll wrap up this here. Thank you so very much, everyone, for your time and efforts. I couldn't take up some questions. We can actually send them back to all the panelists here. I think they won't mind answering, responding to them. You can mail them. I think you can speak to Siddesh. He will coordinate it for you. Thank you so very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks,
So thank
everyone.
you.
Have a nice
Thank you.
evening.
Thank
Bye
you all
bye.
panelists. I'm pretty sure everyone who attended the talk got something or the other to learn. And thank you all for coming out, giving out a 1.5 hour. And we love the session. So thank you to all participants also who showed up today. And yeah, that's it. That's it for today.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank you. Bye
for
bye.
this. And
Nice evening.
Members, if you all have more questions that we weren't able to get, then you can just put it in the feedback form, and we'll send it to the panelists. Okay. So thank you once again for joining in. Goodbye.